I loved Doom 2016 for several reasons, some of which would surprise you. One of them was the fact that it had something of a story. It wasn't just, you are the Doom guy and you shoot demons. There was a bit more to it. And believe it or not, the fact that our character never spoke didn't bother me there. It's strange, but his extremely brutal and careless behavior, even with things that might be of value to him, seemed so appropriate. Well, here we are a few years later and Doom Eternal is finally out. This time the story is even deeper than before and our protagonist actually has a few voice lines in a few cutscenes. I know what many of you think, no voice actor could do the Doomslayer justice, but I have to say, I think the delivery was very good. The story effectively shows our protagonist as something of a demigod, which actually makes an even more badass game out of it because it allows the developer to give us a few new abilities beyond what we've had before. But as with all games, we are introduced to our toys one step at a time. Earth is being overrun by demons and the Slayer is not supposed to intervene now that he has ascended to the status of demigod. The people are being taken and tortured, after which their souls are extracted and converted into an energy resource. But if you know 90s protagonists, you know that they don't take shit from anyone. So the Slayer breaks all the rules and stands on the side of humanity. I won't give you any more details because that would be spoiling, but know that there are a lot of codex entries that have to be read in order for you to fully grasp the story here. Before I go into the gameplay, I would be remiss if I didn't notice the excellent ultra-wide support. The game runs natively in both 21:9 and 32:9 and even features HDR, although I must admit that it didn't seem to make a significant enough difference for me. The game's HUD is centered so you don't have to move your head too much even when you play on very large monitors. When it comes to the gameplay, the developers have not forgotten what it was that most people praised about Doom 2016, namely the fact that it was a return to the old school. So in Eternal we see even greater steps in that direction. Now you have doors that require colored keys again, the archvile is back, but you also get new enemies, new weapons, and even increased mobility and platforming to go with it. If you think back, Doom 1 and 2 didn't really allow you for much in terms of platforming. Our character wasn't even capable of jumping. Still, there was some limited function of it involving walking on tiny paths as well as boosting oneself with rockets if you wanted to play that way. In other words, while platforming is not necessarily a new concept, I feel as though here it did not improve the game. It does make it possible to hide even more intricate secrets throughout the levels, but it felt to me as though it was used too often and sometimes way too strictly. By the end of the game, I fell many times on some of the sections, and while the game teleports you to the last safe zone on which you could stand and only takes a small chunk of your HP as penalty, it still seemed like an annoyance for me to have to traverse these jumping sections. It just felt out of place. Not to mention that there are places where you're expected to avoid slowly spinning fire chains, which reminds me of Super Mario and thus kills the vibe. I'm sure some people will disagree with me and will probably claim that the platforming freshens up the game so that otherwise you don't have to just go from one arena fight to the next, but it simply annoyed me over time. They probably used too much of it for my taste. Another thing that returns is the monster Infighting. The first time I saw it, I thought it would be an awesome thing to have, but I soon noticed several problems with it. First of all, the monsters stop fighting each other as soon as you are within range, so it cannot be used by the player like it was in the old games. Secondly, I once stood far away and observed the Baron of Hell fight several super weak enemies, and he didn't manage to kill anyone for over 10 minutes. This shows me that the monsters either cannot hurt each other at all, or they do extremely low damage. Whichever it is, it completely destroys the whole point of Infighting, and it was a disappointment for me. It's just for show. Something that is new is the fact that your weapons will always have very low ammo. It's by design. Even after you max the ammo capacity upgrades, the Slayer will barely hold 24 shells for the shotgun, as well as very few of any other types of ammunition. The idea here was to force the player to constantly switch weapons so that they are all relevant. Many monsters also have weaknesses which are easily capitalized on with specific weapons. The lack of ammo was above all an annoyance, and while it did serve its purpose, it also lowered my enjoyment of the game. It's inevitable that each player will prefer some weapons over others, and forcing them to play with all of the guns isn't really such a good idea in my mind. If you want all weapons to be relevant, make them fun to play with and make them useful in every situation. In all fairness, most weapons are actually quite useful and fun to use, but sadly not all of them, and I absolutely did not enjoy how I was constantly low on ammo and sometimes even completely without, forcing me to chainsaw someone for a bit of it. I should be the one deciding which gun I want to use at any moment, instead of my ammo count doing that for me. On the other end, I really like the life system here. You can find 1-ups hidden throughout the maps. These make you instantly revive upon death and the fight continues. If you find yourself without extra life, you revive at the last checkpoint and start the battle anew. The level design was interesting interesting but featured way too many pits to fall in. They really wanted to have that platforming, and I found that it sometimes distracted from the combat. It happened more than once that I would be hit by a monster which would propel me slightly backwards and I would end up falling in a pit. The last thing I want to complain about is simultaneously the most annoying one so far. A new enemy is introduced, and that enemy is called the Marauder. The enemy will attack you with a shotgun blast if you're too close and throw a flame axe at you if you are too far. You have to be at the perfect distance. However, you must also not attack it unless it attempts to melee swing at you. At that moment, its eyes will flash green and you have a short window of opportunity to hit it once before all defenses go up again. And it also has a super weapon resistance, by the way, so you can't simply BFG its ass and cut it in half with your special blade, the latter of which is an instant kill on any enemy except bosses. The problem with the Marauder is that he slows down the combat, changing a fast and brutal fight into a waiting game. It killed the flow and is without a doubt only there to annoy the player. You can't ignore him as well, since he summons a ghost dog that chases you around and constantly harasses you. Whoever designed this enemy should get slapped in the face. But enough ranting, let me tell you more about the things I did enjoy about the game. First of all, the flow of combat. You feel like a badass with each new weapon unlock. You can modify them, you can upgrade them, and the fight gets more and more specialized. The game takes its time to introduce new enemies incrementally as well. The boss fights are also fun. One of the things that surprised me was how long the game actually was. It took me 16 hours to complete it while collecting most of the secrets, and speaking of secrets, there are a lot of them, but my favorite ones without a doubt are the cheat codes. You can collect them and then use them within the mission select screen to unlock even more secrets in the missions you have passed. It's insanely fun, there's nothing more to say to it, and it's absolutely imbalanced. Not to mention the Slayer's Fortress has a room where you can actually play the original Doom 1 and Doom 2 on his very own computer, which is always a cool thing. Ultimately, the gameplay is now lots of fighting combined with level exploration for secrets as well as platforming. I hope that in the future the platforming will be toned down to only being used for secrets, and the combat will be improved by removing the super low ammo limits and the stupid Marauder. So it's not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still a great one. If you like Doom 2016, you will definitely enjoy Doom Eternal as well, and that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching my review of Doom Eternal. Check out my other ones if you're hungry for more. With that being said, have a great day, and I'll hopefully see you on the next one.